The topic for today is research design. And in research design, as you can see, we have to mention that what is the purpose of the study and the strategy that you are adopting in completing the objectives, the research environment, the unit of analysis, sampling design. So all these things we have to describe. So let's move. Now, first of all, we need to understand that how many type of research design are there. So you must have idea that what we are going to discuss. Now in this session, we are going to discuss the 4 research designs. And as you can see in this chart, there are 2 basic type of research design. The one is called exploratory research design, and second is known as conclusive research design. In exploratory study, we are going to explore the research problem. And in conclusive research design, we are finding out the conclusion of the research problem. So I repeat, the basic difference between exploratory research design and this conclusive research design is that in exploratory research design, we are exploring the research problem. We are exploring the research problem. The research problem is not clear, but after exploring, at the end of the exploratory research design, the problem will be clear. So we started from the ambiguity and reach at the research problem. In conclusive research design, we start from the research problem and find out the conclusion of that. The basic difference between that two. Now in conclusive research design, again we are having 2 different types, the descriptive research and the causal research. In descriptive research design, we find out the solution of the research questions with the help of data. Right? It may be longitudinal and it may be cross-sectional. And in conclusive research design, we conducted an experiment and find out the relationship between the experiment and the outcome. So in causal research, the causal research entirely depends upon the experiment. And on the basis of the experiment, we are finding out the relationship between the experiment and the outcome. So this is causal research. Causal research is also known as experimental research. And in descriptive research, we try to find out the solution of the research questions, research problem on the basis of the data analysis, hypothesis testing. So, and we are having the 4th type also. This 4th type is known as qualitative research design, which is gaining a lot of popularity nowadays. So we are having the basic 4 type of research design, although qualitative research design we don't count in the research design, but slowly and slowly it is coming up, and very soon you will have a separate research design in the form of qualitative research design. Otherwise, some books keep it in the exploratory category. But now the area of the qualitative research design increases, and we are having so many techniques which we can incorporate it in the qualitative research design that we are going to discuss today. So I hope you have idea that what we are going to discuss today. Okay, now let's start with the exploratory, causal and descriptive. The basic difference between the exploratory study and the causal and descriptive study is the ambiguity. Ambiguity of the research problem. In exploratory research design, the problem actually is not clear. And frankly speaking, when the student take admission in the PhD program, or as a researcher, you are interested in writing a paper. So initially you are a blank. You are blank because you are not having clarity on the research problem. So initially you are not having the clarity on the research problem. So you are basically blank. Now what to do? So you read the literature review, you meet the customers, you meet the industry experts, you talk to the academic experts, and after all these steps, you know that this is the problem. For example, if I ask you that what is the performance of pharmaceutical sector nowadays, right? So this is an exploratory question because I do not have any idea. If I ask you that what is the impact of COVID-19 on the salary of the teachers, I have no idea. So I will take the information, I will collect the information from different people, and after taking the data, I will have the idea that what is the real scenario in the economy. So in all these cases, initially we don't have any idea, but when we collect the data, after that we got the idea. So in exploratory study, we started from only with an idea, and after collecting the information, we have clarity on the research problem. So exploratory study ends with the research problem, the clarity of the research problem. So normally in a PhD, the first responsibility of the scholar is to get clarity on the research problem, because if research problem is not clear, you cannot start the PhD program. Even you cannot submit the research proposal. So according to me, research proposal should be submitted after a small study that is called exploratory study. After exploratory study, the research problem will be clear. So whatever research you are doing, before submitting the research proposal or synopsis, that study will be the can be considered as exploratory study, because after this study the problem will be clear. And in descriptive and causal study, it starts when exploratory study ends. So when exploratory study ends, research problem is clear, then you start the descriptive study or the causal study. So one thing is very clear in between the two, exploratory and causal and descriptive, that hypotheses play a very important role in distinguishing the exploratory versus causal and descriptive. Now in exploratory, because problem is not clear, so can we start with an hypothesis? No. In exploratory study, the hypothesis cannot be considered. You cannot do exploratory study with the hypothesis. But causal and descriptive study should start from the hypothesis. So hypothesis is one of the criteria which is helpful in discriminating the exploratory and causal and descriptive. Now, this is, if you see the basic definition, in exploratory research, we are not aware about the problem. In descriptive research, we are aware about the problem. And in causal research, the problem is clearly defined and experimentation is done to solve the hypothesis or to test the hypothesis. In descriptive research and causal research, the basic difference is that hypothesis is there in both descriptive as well as causal, but in descriptive study, the hypothesis is tested with the help of statistical analysis. In causal research, the hypothesis is tested with the help of some experiment. So we will discuss that, no problem. Okay, so there are three things which you can see here. Emphasis. The emphasis of exploratory in the discovery of idea and insight. In descriptive, we go in detail. And in causal, we find out the cause and effect relationship. So it is, the exploratory is flexible because you are not having any idea, so you can do anything. You can conduct focus group, you can take interviews, you can collect the information. So it is totally unstructured. Descriptive is structured because problem is very clear and you have a specific plan to examine the hypothesis. And in causal, you know that you have to make different groups, control group, experimental group, and you conduct an experiment. So in causal, the control group is important, experimental group is important, and you have to decide the variables of the experimentation. Technique used in exploratory, we use focus group, in-depth interview, mostly qualitative. So I said that the qualitative research is put in the category. However, in descriptive, we do surveys, observation, panel data. Most quantitative research is possible in descriptive. In causal, we do the experimentation. This is the basic difference between the exploratory, descriptive, and causal. So first of all, let's see what we are doing in exploratory research. As I said, when you take admission in PhD program or when you start writing a paper, the first research you are required to do is exploratory research. So what you are doing in exploratory research, you take the polls, surveys, initial survey for collecting the data. You take the interviews of the experts. There are two types of experts we consider in the research. One is academic experts and second is industry experts, or third is customer. So you will take the interviews of three parties and you may conduct focus group interviews, observations, you observe something, and case study is also the part of exploratory. Literature research, that I hope every PhD scholar is doing, literature research. And online research, if you go to the website or you go to the Google and read as much as possible about that phenomena. So all these things comes in the exploratory research, and I believe that before start writing the paper, before submission of the research synopsis, the exploratory research is important. Without doing some exploratory study, you cannot go to the descriptive, you cannot go to the causal research. So the exploratory research is this. Similarly, these are the techniques which I tell you. Okay, so initial exploratory research is basically the initial research conducted to clarify and define the nature of the problem. This research will not give you any conclusive evidence. You cannot do any type of conclusion as a result of exploratory research. Rather, you define the problem. The problem will be understood after doing the exploratory research. Right? Okay. Now, I hope some clarity will come. After that, we are having the descriptive research. So after exploratory research, the problem is clear and you want to solve this problem. So one thing is very clear, that without doing exploratory research, problem can be cleared. Problem cannot be cleared. Problem will be clear only after doing the exploratory research. Now in descriptive research, you start with the hypothesis, you know that, you understand the nature of the problem, right? You know the population, you know the phenomena, and you can test the hypothesis using a statistical test. You know the theoretical background, the background of the problem, and now you are going to add the value in the existing literature. So in descriptive research, in the starting, the problem is clear. Number two, hypotheses are framed. Number three, statistical tests are decided to apply the hypothesis testing, and theoretical background is clear. And fifth is, you are going to add some value by contributing something in the literature. So this is called descriptive research. Now, after understanding the difference between exploratory research and descriptive research, one thing is very clear, that in PhD program, if you're writing that I'm doing exploratory research, something is wrong, something is mismatch, because exploratory research you should do before submission of this proposal, right? After submission of the proposal, it is assumed that the research problem is clearly defined, right? So your PhD program or the research paper most of the time should be descriptive in nature. Exploratory research is normally done by the companies and the in practical, because they are interested in collecting the information. They are more interested in collecting the information, and then after, on the basis of the research, they identify the problem, right? Then they do research to solve that problem. That is a different thing. But most of the industry research may be exploratory, because they want to go in detail of the problem, then only they can find out the solution. Okay, so I hope you have some idea about the descriptive and exploratory. And the third is causal research. In the causal research, we conducted the experiments to understand the relationship between the different variables. And in this session, we are going to discuss in much detail. Like you can see, there is a symbol, the dollar and the heart. So we are identifying that is there any relationship between the money and the heart. So on the basis of the experiment is very important here. Evidence of causality. So we conducted the events, find out the relationship between the events, and we decided the control group, experimental group, and then reach at a problem. Now, at this point of time, I am telling you the story, one story. If you remember, you have seen so many murder movies in your life, right? So if you remember any of the murder movie, just think about any of the murder movie. Now I'm trying to differentiate the movie into three parts. Just listen carefully. So let's start from the beginning. So when you start watching the movie, the murder happens, right? In most of the murder movies, the murder happens in first 5 minutes. Now the murder happens. So somebody is murdered. Now after that, the detective came into the picture, and at this time, the detective only know that somebody is murdered. Somebody was killed, right? So what activities the detective is going to start? Suppose you are the detective, and you somebody called you and say that the murder take place, and you are a detective. So if I ask you, what should you do initially? And if you if you start thinking, then some points may come in your mind. For example, at this stage, when you came to know that somebody was murdered and you are responsible for solving that mystery, so first of all, what you should do, you take a diary and you take a pen and you start collecting the information as much as possible. So in first stage, this is the first stage. So in first stage, you want to collect the information. For example, who was the person who was murdered, and at what time he was murdered, what is the place where the person was murdered, what the person was doing at this place where he was murdered, who was the other people present during the place, right? So what is this? This is the efforts for collecting the information as much as possible. So सबसे पहले आप क्या करोगे? जितनी ज्यादा इंफॉर्मेशन कलेक्ट कर सकते हो, जितनी ज्यादा मींस फोरेंसिक वाले भी आपको रिपोर्ट देंगे, पोस्टमार्टम वाले भी आपको रिपोर्ट देंगे, है ना? तो आपको बहुत सारी रिपोर्ट मिलने वाली है, so many reports. So you got the information for from forensic department, you got the report from postmortem, you got the report from the doctors, you got the report from family members, you got the information from friends, right? So after this stage you have complete information about the person, about the event. So इस स्टेज को हम बोलेंगे exploratory study. So I hope you understand now, because in exploratory study you just collect the information. After this stage you have all information with you, you have the information from different sources, and now the second stage starts. So what is the second stage? Now you start taking the interview of different people. Now you start collecting the start inviting the different people, and you are going into the details, minute details from the persons identified. So this stage, when you are going into minute details, and at this time the problem is very much clear, that प्रॉब्लम क्या थी यहाँ पे कि किसका मर्डर हुआ, इसका इस आदमी का इतने बजे इस जगह पे मर्डर क्यों हुआ, किसने किया. तो आपको बड़ी प्रॉब्लम बहुत क्लियर है. So hypothesis, now you can start the hypothesis. So what are the hypothesis, possible hypothesis at this time? The murder may be because of the enemy, the murder is maybe because of the theft, the murder may happen because of the love angle. So now you start with the hypothesis, right? So you start with the hypothesis, and different hypotheses you are having to start the case, and you decided your all of hypothesis, and by your detailed informations you may accept or reject the hypothesis, right? So this part, this section is known as descriptive analysis, descriptive research. So when you have the complete information about the problem, when research problem is very much clear, and you have enough hypothesis to test in order to conclude the problem, this part is known as descriptive research. Now the third part, it may be possible that you put some you start some experimentation. You know that the police give information in the newspaper, or the police do some experimentation. So they have decided that let's make a fake news in the newspaper so that the culprit may take some action. So all these things are known as experimentation. So they are doing the experimentation also in order to find out at a conclusion. So this is called causal research. So when you want to solve the hypothesis on the basis of experimentation, this case is known as causal research. So I hope after this example you must have the clarity between the exploratory research, the causal research, descriptive research. In exploratory research, you are only collecting the information as much as possible from different sources to understand the problem. Descriptive research start with the problem, start with the hypothesis, start with the test, and to arrive at a conclusion with the help of data testing. The causal research is basically the experimental research, and you are testing the hypothesis on the basis of experiment. So let's discuss exploratory and descriptive. I think you understand very well, but we have to discuss a lot on experimental research. So let's move now. Now after that, before moving to the experimentation, now I'm going to explain you the two approaches, research approaches. We call them research approach. So there are two types of research approach in the research. One is called deductive reasoning and second is called inductive reasoning. And you know that in most of the time you heard these words, that what is deductive reasoning and what is inductive reasoning. Right. Now, what is this deductive reasoning? In deductive reasoning, you know that there is a theory. There is some theory. Like, for example, the police department work on three theories: that enemy, love, and that property case, right? So they have to decide that let's try this theory and examine the case. So when you start with a theory to solve the hypothesis, this approach is known as deductive approach. So in deductive approach, you identify the theory which can help you in solving the problem, right? For example, if you want to see the behavior of online education, that whether people are adopting it or not, so you can start with a theory. Like, there is a theory called TAM theory, technology acceptance model, and you start your study assuming this theory. So the problem when the research problem is solved, right, on the basis of hypothesis testing with the help of a theory, then this approach is known as deductive reasoning. So you study the theory, make the hypothesis, find out the observation, examine the hypothesis, and confirm the theory. So in most of the research, you know that most of you are doing the descriptive research. So most of the descriptive research is started with a theory, and then we make the hypothesis and try to confirm it, confirm the hypothesis, confirm the theory. This approach is known as deductive reasoning. And if you are studying this kind of study, it is expected that you must have complete command on the theory so that you can add some value to the theory. The second approach, which is known as inductive approach, this inductive approach is basically known as the formation of theory on the basis of the observation. So you start observing the things and you have seen a pattern, and after that you make a hypothesis and you come out with a theory. Like, for example, in India, why so many business fails, right? This is, you know, that Anil Ambani, the case of Anil Ambani, the Jayaprakash company, there are thousands of companies like this. At one time they were very successful, but now nobody is asking them. Their share price are available on 4 rupee, 5 rupee, 7 rupee. At one time the share price was 800, 900 and all, right? So we are analyzing, we want to know why the company fails. So it is a observation, it is one observation. Like, nowadays, you know that the students like to attend online training programs, so there is a craze about online training programs. And when I started taking the online classes, I feel that after 1 or 2 months it will be over. But now the surprising fact is that it is increasing day by day. So this is a pattern. Increasing day by day means pattern. And pattern means now I can assume a hypothesis. Hypothesis means the what is the sustainability of this online platform. So I can assume a hypothesis and can examine with the help of data, and then I can make a theory. Whatever theory I will form is only based on my observation. So when the observation leads to the theory, this is called inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is very much popular in case of qualitative research, or in case of research which is based on some phenomena. So this approach is known as inductive research. Now, if we relate the deductive research and inductive research for with exploratory, descriptive, and causal, the descriptive and causal are influenced by deductive approach, and exploratory research and qualitative research are based on inductive approach. So these two approaches you should have clear, that which approach I'm going to follow. Am I going to follow the deductive approach? It means my research is guided by the theory, and or my research is guided by the observation or the phenomena. So this is the difference between inductive approach and the deductive approach. And I hope you are clear that what is this approach, what is the difference between inductive approach and deductive approach. Okay, so just read this logical process of establishing a general proposition on the basis of observations of particular facts. Okay, so now I am giving you some idea about the experimental designs, right? So in experimental design, you can see that we are having two different groups. This is the control group and this is the experimental group. So whenever you are planning to conduct some experiment research, you have to start with minimum two groups. One group is known as control group and other group is known as experimental group. Now I'm giving you some examples before moving to the next slide. Suppose there is a doctor. Recently I met with a doctor and the doctor say those who are having enough vitamin D in the body, the chances of lung function, lung diseases is very less. So he, according to his experience, so he say that those who are having plenty of vitamin D, and this vitamin D is coming from the natural light. So these people are more healthy and they have less problems in the lung functions and other problems, right? So this is the experience of the doctor. Now, after some time, he took admission into some university, and after taking the admission, he decided to confirm his theory or experience or knowledge. So he decided to conduct an experiment. He divided the patient into two groups because normally patient comes to him. So he divided the patient into two groups. One who are having the vitamin D more than 20. Ideally, it should be 30. But even if you are having vitamin D level more than 20, it is sufficient. It is considered to be good, sufficient. So there are two groups. In one group, vitamin D is more than 20. In second group, the vitamin D is less than 20. And then he also measure the lung functions, and he keep on measuring this for some months to find out that how these lung functions uh, progress with time in two different kind of patients. So after some time, he found that the persons who are having enough vitamin D in their body, they are more healthy and they have less problems related to the lungs. And the patients who are having less vitamin D, slowly and slowly they have a problem of lung functions, right? So now the conclusion he made is that vitamin D, presence of vitamin D have a significant impact on the lung functions. Okay, so this is the experiment which I just completed few months back, right? So this example come to my mind. Other example I'm giving you, and this is a world famous example. According to that example, in this example, there was a researcher. The researcher make two groups of employees. So the employees of a company are divided into two different groups. One group, uh, one group was seen the positive movies, right? So they are sent into the camps. Both the groups sent to the camps, and the one group is called X group and second group is called Y group for namesake. So the X group, to the X group, they show positive movies, positive clips, the movies of fairy tales, the movies of love, the movies of motivation, the movies of the best personalities in this world. And the second group, Y group, they were exposed to the movies like the movies of war, horror movies, right? The movies which are based on jealousy, the movies which are based on fighting, right? Or negative side. So one group is exposed to the positive movies and second group is exposed to the negative movies. मतलब सिंपल सी बात ये है कि पहले ग्रुप को कुछ दिनों तक बहुत अच्छी मूवी दिखाते रहे, और दूसरे ग्रुप को बहुत ही जो नेगेटिव साइड होती है मूवीज, वॉर की, लड़ाइयों की, ठीक है, खून खराबे की मूवी उनको दिखाते रहे. So this is the issue. After some time, so when we show all these movies to them, then they assign the task to different groups, right? So the task of such nature that they can complete the task in the team as well as they can complete the task individually. उनको ऐसे task दिए गए जो वो टीम में भी कर सकते थे और individually भी कर सकते थे. So it was observed that the X group, which was exposed to the positive side, so they start completing the task individually. The second group, right, with the group which is exposed to the negative side, negative movies, they start doing the task in a team, right, in a team. So from this experiment, they form a very important theory. This theory is known as theory of group dynamics. The theory of group dynamics. I'm not a HR person, but this theory is so famous, and we can apply this theory in finance also, right? So so what is the conclusion, what is the theory which is coming from this experiment is that if the employees in a company are happy, they will not form the groups, and if employees are not happy in the company, they will form the groups. So wherever there is a fear, the group formation is there. In the stock market, you know that when the economy is moving positively, when good news are there in the stock market, some stocks moves in different speed, some stocks are not moving, some stocks are moving. But when there is a fear comes into the market, all stocks comes moving down at the same speed, at the same rate. So you know that when there is a fear in the market, all these stocks are moving down. But when there is no fear in the market, some stocks are moving up, some stocks are not moving up. So the every stock perform individually. There is the systematic risk is less, but in negative side, the systematic risk is very high. Even you can think of any company. Recently, you know that there was a strike in Coal India. There was a strike in Maruti also sometimes back. All these strikes are resulting in because of the fear. जहाँ पे fear होता है, जहाँ पे डर होता है, तो सारे एक हो जाते हैं. जहाँ पे डर नहीं होता, वहाँ पे सब एक नहीं होते. तो there is a concept of group dynamics, and all the theories are coming on the basis of experimental design. And in in marketing as well as in medical science, you know that the experimentation are so common. And like recently I got a report from IPCA lab. They say that we divided the COVID patient into two categories. One patient we give the plasma therapy, and to the second group we are not giving any plasma therapy. They are the routine patients, and we want to know whether this plasma therapy is a significant therapy causing the significant improvement in the patient or not. ठीक है, तो उनका उनका कंसेप्ट ये था कि क्या प्लाज्मा थेरेपी से ज्यादा इफेक्ट होता है as compared to a normal group. So in this case, you know that there are two groups. And to one group they provide the plasma therapy, to another group they are nothing, normal treatment. And after that they give me the results, and I have to find out whether there's a significant difference between them or not, right? So this is also the example of experimental design. In marketing, pharmaceutical, psychology, education, these experiments are very common. Now let's start some basic properties of the experimental group. So in experimental design, there are some symbols like O, like X, like EG, like CG, like R, like M, right? So we have to understand the what is the meaning of these things. Now you have to understand these words, otherwise the experimental design is very difficult to understand. First is O. O means measurement. O means measurement. Suppose I am going to measure your height So I'm measuring something, right? So if I am going to measure the fever measurement, if I am going to measure the performance measurement, so something which you are measuring is represented by O. Clear? So if you are measuring something, this is represented by O in the experimental design. X, what is X? X is the experiment. What experiment you are doing? Right? Maybe you are giving a medicine, you are trying a medicine, you are trying a education system, you are trying some experiment. So experiment is represented by the X. So O is the observation, measurement, X is the treatment, and it is called experimental treatment because you are giving this treatment only to the experimental group. Then EG is experimental group, CG is control group. Control group we keep only two comparison. We can compare the result of experimental group to the control group. This R means whatever patient you are selecting is on random basis. Right? So R is known as randomization. The way you select the units in the experiment. What is the process you adopted to select the unit? Unit means objects. Object means patients or students or whatever customers you are including in the group in the test is known as random assignment, R. Okay. Now M means the equality balance, because you cannot say that I pick 10 patient in experiment, 100 patient in control group. No, they should be equal, right? So after understanding these simple terms, let's move. Okay. Now, what is this experiment? Right. Experiment is simply a procedure. Experiment is simply a procedure carried out to support, refute, or validate a hypothesis. In medical science, the hypothesis that the medicine is having better impact as compared to placebo. So this is the experiment. In social science, you can provide a different treatment to the patients. It is an experiment. Experiments provide insight into cause and effect by demonstrating what outcome occurs when a particular factor is manipulated. Manipulated means the experiments. Like you know that we in our teaching life we do a lot of experiments. Sometimes we teach from with PPT. Sometimes we teach on the blackboard. Sometimes we teach with the help of case study. So we are doing a lot of experiments, and um, after these experiments we conclude that this method is much better, this method is not better. So these are also the experiments. This experiment is a research investigation in which conditions are controlled. Controlled conditions, I hope you know, because you have to decide that what medicine to provide to the patients, when the medicine should be provided, like this. And sometimes the independent variables are many. And like for example, you have to decide that how many males should be there, how many females should be there, how many old people should be there, how many young people should be there. So you have to decide so many things also. And finally, you have to measure the impact of the independent variables on the dependent variable. And the objective of these experiments is to test the hypothesis to arrive at a conclusion. Okay, so these are the basic issues in the experimental design, like manipulation of the independent variables. So because you have to completely decide that what experiment we should provide. This experiment is independent variable in experimental design. Then selection and measurement of dependent variable. Selection and assignment of test unit. Test unit means patients and all. And then you have decide the different variables, like which are control variable, which are extraneous variables. So I will explain you these control and extraneous variables in much detail. Okay. So I hope up to this level you are clear. Now, some other points. So basically in experimental design, you are having the independent variable or the experiments, and you want to find out their change influences on the dependent variable. The experimenter, which is you, has some degree of control over the independent variable, right? You दवाई देनी है, कितनी देनी है, किसको देनी है, कितने बजे देनी है ना? तो ये सारे आपके पास कंट्रोल है. So you have to decide your independent variable. The variable is independent because its value can be manipulated by the experimenter to whatever he or she wishes it to be. Okay. Now, dependent variable, you have to decide about the dependent variable. Ultimately, आपको measure क्या करना है? So in medical science, you have to measure the fever, or you have to decide the improvement. So this is the dependent variable. Basically, impact. So what is the impact? So impact means in education, the impact may be in learning, in teaching effectiveness. In psychology, the impact may be in the form of motivation, or impact may come in the performance basis. So this is the dependent variable, right? So its value is expected to be dependent on the experimental manipulation and the standard or criteria by which results are judged. So as a researcher, you have to decide your dependent variable in the experimentations. Okay. Test unit, you know that what is test unit? The unit on which you are doing the test experiments. They may be your customers, they may be your patients, they may be your the students. So these are the test unit. We call them test units, and we should make efforts that all the test units should be equal initially. Means at initial level, there should not be no difference between the control group and the experimental group. Otherwise, you will get the biased results. Initially, all the test units should be same, right? Otherwise, you will have the problem. Like we are having a concept called single blind, double blind, triple blind, right? So blind means initially whatever process you are adopting, it should be same for control group as well as experimental group, so that all the groups should be same, exactly same. And double and triple blind means we should also keep the proportion of gender, age group, experience group, all these should be same, right? We want that the same proportion of male and female should be in experimental group, in control group. The same proportion of the age group should be there. So how many variables you are using for keeping the similarity? So this is called test unit or blending process. Now, when you do the experimentation, there are two types of chances of error. One which is coming because of some randomness. It may be possible that some chance error may come. For example, in one group, the people are more healthy as compared to another group. This is a chance group, random errors, and you have no control on the errors, but some errors are constant. Like for example, you know that if there is a continuous voltage fluctuations, the result will be affected by this constantly. So once you made a mistake, the effect of this mistake will be continuously in the results, right? So as a researcher, you should be very, very careful that no error should come in my experimentation. For example, in pharmaceutical, what they do, they combine so many drugs in the tablet, and if they keep the proportion wrong, so its impact will come continuously in the results. So these errors should be controlled. It is expected that as a researcher you should not do this kind of mistakes, because whatever you decided in the experiment, you have to stick to that. Okay. Now the problem, this is the biggest problem in experimental research. This problem is known as extraneous variables. And whenever you talk about the experimental designs, the extraneous variables is very dangerous. Extraneous variables are those variables which are beyond your control. You cannot control these variables, and these variables have an impact on your results. These variables have an impact on your results. This is the problem, right? Now, what is the what are these problems? So I'm giving you some examples. Suppose you decided to conduct the experiment, and for that you design control group and the experimental group. And after the after some time, the people in experimental group came to know that you are doing experiment on them. Yeah, in medical science, you have to tell them that I am doing experiment on you. In medical science, it is true, but in social science, you may not disclose this. But if they come to know that experimentation is the doctors are doing experimentation on us, the behavior may change, right? The behavior may change. So this is also beyond your control. Sometimes what happens, the patient, some of the patient may die during the experimentation, or some of the patients may quit during the experimentations. Some of the people, some of the units are hiding something, that suppose there is one condition that you should not take alcohol during the experimentation, but they are taking the alcohol, and the effect of medicine is not coming. So all these problems, right? All the problems are beyond your control. So as an experiment, you should take the precaution that all the variables should not affect my results. Otherwise, I will get my biased result. In if you are doing the experimentation in the lab, you know that temperature should be constant, the voltage should be constant. So you have to make arrangements that all these variables should be constant, right? So as an experimenter, as a researcher, you should know what kind of mistakes, what kind of problems may come during the experiments, and at initial level you have to identify the possible problems and make efforts or conduct the experiment in such a way that these problems should not come. So these problems are known as extraneous variables. So I hope you now understand what is extraneous variables. When somebody asks you what are the different extraneous variables in the what are the possible extraneous variables in the experimental design, you should be aware about that, right? Okay. Now there is a concept on the basis of these extraneous variables. There is a very popular concept. This concept is known as internal validity. And believe me, this is very important. So there are two types of validity in the experimental designs. The first is known as internal validity, and second is known as external validity. So what is the meaning of internal validity and external validity? I'm going to explain. If you are saying that the results entirely depends upon my experiment, this is called internal validity, right? For example, you are teaching same subject in two different class, right? And you have decided, or you can say that you are teaching the same subject in two different colleges. Because if you are teaching in the same college, they will compare that the teacher is teaching me like this and teacher is not teaching us in like this. So in the same college, it is a problem because they can compare. But suppose you are teaching the same subject in two different colleges, and these colleges are at the same level, and you have decided that in this college I will teach using the blackboard, and in second college I will teach using the case study. And after that you found that the feedback is very high in case of case study and feedback is very low in case of blackboard. So you conclude that my feedback depends on the method have a significant impact on the feedback. Now here, what is expected? expected is that the feedback entirely depends upon the experimentation, right? So if you can say the experiment have a significant effect on the feedback, then this is called internal validity. Internal validity. So whatever be the change in the feedback in two different colleges is because of the method you adopted. So that is called internal validity. But if the feedback depends upon other reasons, maybe in one college there is no teacher of the subject, so only you are teaching the subject, so they may be very happy whether you are teaching with a case study or not. So in that case you cannot say that the feedback depends only on the method. Actually, this is the problem. uh, when dependent variable depends only on the outcome, or sorry, experiment, then this concept is called internal validity. Now after that, if you conclude some results, now you conclude that the feedback is a function of method, and case study method is normally giving you high feedback. So if other teachers is doing the same experiment, suppose they read your paper and now they decided to teach their class on the basis of case study, right? So whether they are getting the same result or not. So external feedback means if other researchers are conducting the same experiment and getting the same result, then this is called external validity. I'm giving you one example. In US, it is found that it is a theory, I forget the name of the theory. The theory say that if you give more power, or if you train the academic leaders, the student have a better learning, and teachers are doing the better teaching, and the placement of the company will improve. The placement of the teachers will improve, right? Now they have conducted this experiment in the US, and it is found to be true, and they formed the theory. In India, so somebody I know that she conducted a study on this and found that in India this theory is a big failure. Why? Because in India, academic leaders are the puppets of the chairman. So you know that most of the directors, they are just doing the buttering of the chairman, not and saving their job. So this theory is not applicable in India, and the theory is not having external validity, right? So sometimes the theory is not same at different places, and whenever you conducted the experiment, you are not getting the same results. In US, there another experimentation was done where they say that they launch two type of advertisements. In one advertisement, they do the normal advertisement. In second category, they included the social message, right? They included the social message. In another experiment, they did not include any social message, any the same normal advertisement. Then they found that the advertisement where they included the social message, right, like saving the environment, like this, they found that impact is much more, right? So they concluded that the inclusion of the social message in the advertisement have a more impact on the customer intention. Now in India, when Indian companies when the experiment is done in India, they found that there is no impact. Right, there is no impact on the Indian customers. So it means the concept is not having external validity. Okay, so I hope you understand what is the internal validity and external validity. Internal validity can be defined as the when dependent variable entirely depends upon the experiment, not uh, because of extraneous variables. This is called internal validity. And external validity means when the same experiment is conducted by other person outside in other country, then this is and getting the same result, then this is called external validity. Okay, Now, these are some of the examples of extraneous variables like history. For example, a major employer closes his plant in the text market area. You are doing a marketing study, but somebody closes the plant. This is beyond your control. And maturation means subjects becomes tiredness. They feel tired. They feel, uh, you know that when you use the same machine, even uh, there is a machine, the efficiency of the machine also decreases with time. Similarly, the respondents also feel tiredness after some time. So it is a called maturation problem. Testing means, because if your students know that the teacher is doing experiment on us, so they also feel bad or good, and giving you the different outcome. Then instrument, sometimes due to wear and tear, instrument is uh, giving you different performance. Selection, right? So sometimes the experimental group and control group are not different or not same. Initially, there is a slight difference in the experimental group and the control group. So when there is an initial difference between experimental group and control group, it will have an impact on the performance or on the outcome. Mortality means uh, some died, quit, or remove the experimentation. Then it is also a problem. Okay. Now, there are some research designs. There are many experimentation research design to to solve the problem of internal validity. So some basic design I am going to discuss in this session, but I will not discuss the very advanced kind of research designs, experimental research designs, because they will take a lot of time. Um, Now, control group, random assignment, pre-testing, post-testing only. These are some of the methods which experimenter, the person who is conducting the experiment, should know and take care of. Control group means the initially the control group and the experiment group should be exactly same, right? This is one condition to remove the internal validity problems in internal validity. Second, the random assignment should be done in the beginning, so that the control group, experimental group should be same. And there is a pre-testing. Now, pre-testing and post-testing means you want to confirm that whether control group and experimental group are initially same or not. And post-testing means after conducting the experiment, is there any difference between the two or not? So I hope you understand what is pre-testing and post-testing. Now I'm telling you some simple experiments, and you will understand very easily. So when I say XO, right? So when I say XO, so you know that the researcher take one group, conducting the experiment, measure the impact, and this design is called one-shot design. In one-shot design, there is only one group, and you do some experiment on that, and after that measure the impact. So this is the simplest design. Like for example, some patient come to you and you give us different medicine and check whether this medicine is having impact on the health or not. So it is simply called one shot design. Second is one group pre-test, post-test test. In this test, you know that first of all you measure the take measurement, and before the experiment, X is the experiment. Before the experiment, you are measuring something. Let's say you are measuring their performance. Like then you introduce this experiment, and after this experiment, you measure the again performance. And if there is a difference between O1 and O2, it means the X is having a significant impact on the uh, performance, right? Okay. Now you know that in different companies they introduce different policies. Like I remember a college, and the NIRF rating provides a very poor rating to the college because of the poor publication. So the publication of the teachers in the colleges was very poor, And after that, the college decided, so let's introduce the incentive system. So if anybody publish in journals, we will give monetary rewards to the faculty members. And after that, after 1 year, they found that there is a significant improvement in the publications. So now you can say that there is a significant effect of the monetary policy on the monetary policy नहीं उसको हम incentive बोलेंगे, incentive on the quantity of the publication. So this is called one group, pre-test and post-test design. Similarly, we are having a static group design, which is very common. You make two groups, experimental group, control group. You apply experiment on the group and you leave control group as it is. Normally, to show, we can provide placebo. Placebo means glucose or water. So either you are doing nothing or you are just giving some placebo to show that we are also giving you something. So you provide experiment in group number 1 and you are doing nothing on a control group, and then measure O1 and O2. And then you compare whether O1 and O2 are different or not. O1 and O2 are the measurement. Now, after that, we are having some 3 more designs. I am showing you the most popular designs in the experimental research. In this design, first of all, you take the random selection of the experimental group, random selection of control group. Then you take the measurement of the experimental group and take measurement of the control group. And you want to be confirmed that O1 should be equal to O3. Why O1 should be equal to O3? Because initially they should be same. Then you provide one experimentation, introduce the experiment on experimental group and measure O2. No experiment in control group and measure O4. And here the purpose is that we want to show that O2 should be greater than O4. Why? Because you have to prove that experiment is better. Experiment have a significant effect on the performance or the outcome variable. This is the most popular. This design is the most popular design among the experimenters. So they adopted this design. Then we are having a post-test only. Here you are not doing pre-testing, but I suggest you to do pre-testing. According to me, this test is better than second test. And third test means you are confirming that I will make 2 experiment group, I will make 2 control group, right? So you want to check whether there is a difference by chance in one group, right? So in Solomon 4 group design, this is called Solomon 4 group design. You are taking the 4 groups, 2 experiment, 2 control, and you are comparing experiment with control group and 1 experiment group with another experiment group. So in the Solomon design, what you would need to prove, I'm just writing here, this O1 should be equal to O3, this, and O2 should be equal to O5, this should be equal to this, and O4 should be equal to O6, this should be equal. And after that, you have to prove that O4 should be less than O2 and O6 should be less than O5. If you can prove this, it means the experiment is having a significant effect on the performance, on the outcome variable. And similarly, so I hope these are very easy things, and I hope you are getting it. So after that, we are having some very complicated designs, and these designs we cannot cover in this session because each design is quite complicated. But if those who are interested in studying these advanced designs, so they should read these. So we are having 4 very complicated designs, like completely randomized block design, latent square design, factorial design. So you can make your own advanced designs in the experiments. So I hope after this you have a clear idea that what are the different experimental designs we can conduct. And in whenever we talk about experimental designs, we should know what is extraneous variables, internal validity, external validity, and all. Now I'm going for the fourth option. Nowadays, this qualitative research design is becoming very popular. So let's discuss on the qualitative research design. Now we are having the grounded theory approach, ethnography approach, and phenomenology approach, and field research, narrative, thematic analysis. So all these comes in qualitative research design: thematic, content, sentiment, text mining, image analytics, and all. Right. So I'm explaining in brief what is this, and please listen carefully. And these may be new terms to you. First of all, we are in qualitative research design. We have this grounded theory approach. So in grounded theory approach, we observe something and collect the data and make the theory, right? Now, giving you one example. In finance, all the mutual fund managers have their own theories. Some say that whenever the turbulent time comes, the pharmaceutical sector is giving the maximum profit. So they have this observation, and in order to prove that, they take the data and make this theory. And one of the problem in the Indian business is that suppose I ask you that why Dhirubhai Ambani is having two major business, and why this Mukesh Ambani is having three business. Like you know that this Mukesh Ambani is having three type of business: petroleum, retail, and Geo. Why three? Why not four? Why not five? Because he is having three children, so three business. Dhirubhai Ambani was having two sons, so he divided all the business into two groups. Similarly, it is found that the number of diversification in a company depends upon the how many children they have, right? So if you observe these kind of things and you want to prove it, so this is called grounded theory approach. And then we have ethnography. Ethnography means whenever you want to study the culture, like if you want to study the European culture, if you want to study the different other culture, right? Like African culture, US culture. So when you make a study on a culture, this is known as ethnography. So ethnography means the culture, right? A study of a culture. A study of a culture. Charges. Sorry. Ethnography is the study of a culture. And then third is having phenomenology. Phenomenology means the study of an experience. Suppose you want to study that what is the experience of the corona patients. Suppose you want to study that anybody who invested in the portfolio, what is the experience. Suppose you want to study the experience of the cancer patients. Suppose you want to study the PhD scholars in India. So this is called phenomenology. Phenomenology. When you study the experience of a particular group, right? A study of a particular group is called phenomenology. I hope you understand that. And field research, when you go to the malls, when you go to the shops, make the study on the basis of observation. So it comes in the field research. And we are having the narratives also. Narratives means the art of storytelling. So when you learn this method and discuss the some case in a story form, this is called narrative. Narrative means storytelling. So these are the five approaches in the qualitative research, and these are the five techniques which I am going to tell you now. In thematic analysis, we convert the material or the resource into themes. So when we convert the qualitative material into themes, qualitative material means like articles, like the pictures, videos, songs, movies. So when you convert them into different themes, this is called thematic analysis. Content analysis means when you identify the contents, like you know that in a movie we are having emotional content, songs is a content, and fighting is a content. All these are contents. So when we do the content analysis of the qualitative or unstructured data, then this is called content analysis. And after that we are having the sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis nowadays, you know, it is a very popular. You are going to study the sentiment of the investors in corona time, sentiment of the investors in the stock market, sentiment of people. Nowadays you know that in political time, during the election period, the sentiments are very important. So sentiment analysis is very popular during the election times. Text mining, if you want to analyze the text, you can do the text mining. Image analysis, nowadays image analysis is getting very popular. If you go to the airport, the camera, by looking at your face, will tell that he is Mr. this and this. So the fourth approach, which is getting a lot of popularity, is qualitative research design. So this is the today's session which I decided to deliver, and so thank you from my side. And